What is going on? Welcome to the episode. Today we're going to be chatting about all things supplements. Now, supplements aren't something that I've dedicated a podcast episode to just yet, and we are over 150 episodes in at this point, which should probably tell you a fair bit about their efficacy in general, but regardless, let's get specific and dive into some of the details and nuance in regards to supps. The supplement space is roughly about a $150 billion plus industry, so people are buying them, that's for sure. The average American spends about $60 to $65 every time they visit a supplement store. And if folks are going, say, 1 to 1.5 times per month, that's like $700 a year. It really adds up. Now, I'm going to break this episode down into 3 sections, one being supplements for fat loss, the second being supplements for muscle building, and then lastly, supplements for health. I'm also going to address specific supplements because I put a post up on Instagram and Facebook to find out what products you guys are curious about, and I'm going to touch on all of the ones that you guys mentioned, as well as some others that I thought would be useful to reference. I'm also going to delve into my personal experience with supplements in the past, as well as exactly what I take right now. So let's dig in. First of all, in general, my approach or vantage point when it comes to supplements is this in a nutshell. Supplements are like the sprinkles on the icing of your cake. They're not the base, they're not the filling, they're not even the icing itself. They are the sprinkles that go on top of the icing. Meaning, whether you're after fat loss, muscle building, or health, if you're not addressing the basics first and foremost via quality nutrition, movement, sleep, and stress management, and you choose to just toss in some supplements on top of a poor lifestyle, I promise you, you are not going to get good results. Simple as that. It's sort of like putting a super sick sound system in your car that doesn't have wheels. It's like, you can't really go anywhere. So now that that disclaimer is out of the way, let's look at supplements in terms of fat loss first. Unfortunately, there really aren't any effective over-the-counter supplements for fat loss that if you were to take, that you'd actually really notice a difference, meaning there are no supplements that you can get commercially that work well for losing fat. Fat-burning steroids, on the other hand, can be very effective. However, they're obviously not over-the-counter and carry a bunch of additional risk to them. So when it comes to fat loss, nutrition is still the name of the game. I experimented with a combo of ephedrine and caffeine back in the day in my early 20s, and ephedrine is actually sold as an over-the-counter nasal decongestant in Canada at least. I don't think it's commercially available in the US at the moment, but it's a powerful stimulant, much more so than caffeine. Now, I implemented it in order to aid fat loss, but honestly, I didn't notice a difference while using it other than the fact that it blunted my appetite to a small degree and gave me that sort of cracked out feeling because the combo of the ephedrine and the caffeine stimulated me like crazy. I wouldn't recommend it for a number of reasons, mostly related to sleep disturbance because stimulants are a double-edged sword, and that is a high price to pay for something that's just not all that effective anyway. Moving on to supplements for building muscle. Creatine is one of the supplements that actually works in regards to building muscle. It's not going to be anything groundbreaking, but it's been heavily studied, it's incredibly safe, and there are also some potential cognitive benefits to it around things like memory. But this could be more of a result of showing benefits in folks that don't get enough creatine in their diet naturally via food. So maybe vegetarians, vegans would be an example because creatine is found in meat. But regardless, if building muscle is a goal of yours, creatine is worth it in my opinion, especially because it's so affordable, safe, and well studied. Now, if you do decide to implement creatine, just go with good old-fashioned creatine monohydrate. There's no reason to go with any of the fancier options because they're overpriced and potentially even less efficacious. If you do start taking creatine and you notice your scale weight increase slightly, that is totally normal because creatine brings some water along with it. So don't sweat this in the slightest. And also, it's not like you just continue to gain water weight. It might be a couple of pounds or something in that range, depending on your size. So it's nothing crazy and it tops off quickly. As far as dosages go, when I take creatine, I take 5 grams per day and timing is irrelevant. Simple stuff. Aside from creatine monohydrate, there really aren't any supplements that I'd recommend for building muscle. Now, some folks consider whey protein a supplement. However, I look at that as more of a food replacement because it's protein derived from milk. And it's worth mentioning that there are no special muscle building properties to whey protein. It's just convenient. And if you tolerate it well from a digestion standpoint, have at it if you'd like. Moving on to supplements for health. This is obviously going to depend a ton on the individual just because everyone is in a different spot in terms of their health due to 1,000,001 reasons. For example, someone eating a heavily processed food diet low in protein, vegetables, and fruit is going to have a much different nutrient status and health level than someone eating a single ingredient, whole food rich diet with adequate protein and plenty of fruit and veg. So I'm going to assume that we're talking about someone that's leaning more so towards the latter, so a single ingredient whole food setup. The only real way to know whether you truly would want or need to supplement for your health is via blood work. However, a lot of folks seem to show some benefit from things like fish oil if they're not eating omega-3 rich fatty fish, like salmon, for example. I definitely recommend going with a whole food salmon option over the supplement, of course, but you can fill that gap with fish oil if need be. Vitamin D3 is another supplement that health conscious folks might want to think about if they live in an area of the world that doesn't get all that much sun year round. However, the cool thing about vitamin D is that it's fat soluble, meaning it's stored in our fat tissue, so we can essentially stock up on it over the summer and on vacations. So even for an individual that lives in a place like Vancouver, Canada, where I grew up, they might not need to supplement. However, again, the only certain way is to tell via blood work. There are additional considerations to keep in mind for folks that are following a single ingredient whole food diet, but choose to go the vegetarian or vegan route. And those considerations are potentially for vitamin A, vitamin K2, vitamin B12, vitamin B6, zinc, omega-3s, and potentially some creatine too. Now, those nutrients are going to need to be considered more so by the individuals leaning towards the vegan approach because a vegetarian that includes some fish, eggs, potentially some dairy, for example, can cover a ton of those bases, and they don't even need to eat that much of those animal products in order to meet their needs. So supplementation is more heavily required for vegans just because there are unique nutrients that can't be found in bioavailable forms in plant products, and bioavailable is just a fancy way of saying absorbable, essentially. So as you can probably see, if you're eating a predominantly single ingredient, whole food rich diet with both plenty of animal products and plant products, and you get some sun exposure, man, you should be in a great spot in regards to your health, which is amazing news because it's so simplistic, right? We're omnivores, meaning we evolved to eat both animals and plants. And so when we do that from healthful sources, nature's got our back. It is awesome. Now let's dig into the specific supplements that you guys asked about. Greens powders. So these are fairly popular these days, and they're essentially powdered fruits and vegetables. And you can take them if you're not big on eating whole food veg and fruit, but I'd recommend eating vegetables and fruit in their whole form for a number of reasons. One big one being that they're satiating, which aids then in fat loss and maintaining a healthful body weight because fruits and veggies are very low in calories, yet super filling. So eating them in their whole form is absolutely preferable. Fat burners, we basically covered this in the fat loss section, but largely ineffective, and diet is by far the driver for fat loss. So I wouldn't even bother with a fat burner and just have a cup of coffee if you're looking for a caffeine kick. Collagen supplements were asked about the most by far, which is interesting. And collagen is important for things like your teeth, hair, skin, and nails. Fortunately, you can get it in your diet from eating animal skin and the gelatinous parts of meat. So for example, you could eat a chicken drumstick with the skin on and then eat all of those goodies right down to the bone, and you can get collagen that way. If that doesn't sound all that appealing, you can always eat bone broth, and some folks even like to sip on this stuff, or you can use it as a soup base, so plenty of ways to get collagen outside of supplementation. However, if you just want to supplement with it, go for it. Biotin was also asked about, specifically in combination with collagen, and fortunately egg yolks are super rich in biotin. So nature for the win again on this one. Egg yolks, by the way, so nutrient rich. It's insane. Eggs are an amazing food. And if you're watching the fat in your diet, but you still want to get plenty of protein, what you can do is use a whole egg or two and then just fill in your protein gap with egg whites or a lean source of meat, fish, or seafood. Multivitamins. Plenty of people like to take these things. They're sort of like an insurance policy. Personally, I don't take one. I just favor a single ingredient, whole food rich diet. But if you want to, have at it. Pre-workout supplements. Man, these are so popular and there is nothing special about them aside from the fact that they have caffeine, which is a stimulant and gives you energy. But like I mentioned before, stimulants are a double-edged sword. If you dislike taking pre-workout supplements, you totally can, but there is nothing special about them. And be sure to keep an eye on your sleep if you do choose to take one of these, because they are caffeine heavy typically. Quercetin was asked about, which is a bioflavonoid, and bioflavonoids are found in fruit and veg, with the highest levels coming from apples and onions, funny enough. Quercetin doesn't have good bioavailability, meaning we don't absorb it very well in supplement form, so I just recommend eating fruit and veg. Magnesium was another popular ask, and there are a whole bunch of different types of magnesium, and the one that you want to avoid is magnesium oxide, just because it's a very low quality source. Some folks find that magnesium helps with their sleep. However, if you take too much, you'll know it because it will cause diarrhea, so it can actually be used to relieve constipation. Leafy greens and nuts contain solid amounts of magnesium, so by no means do you need to supplement with it, but it's an option. L-theanine was asked about specifically in combination with magnesium for sleep, and as far as I know, some supplement companies actually combine caffeine and L-theanine in order to reduce the jitters from caffeine as well as the post-caffeine crash. I don't know about the specific combo of magnesium and theanine for sleep. However, when it comes to sleep in general, it's important to ask yourself, do you really think that a single mineral like magnesium or an amino acid like theanine is the thing that's stopping you from sleeping great? And as soon as you include it, all of a sudden you've found the missing link and you're going to get great sleep? Probably not, right? More important questions to consider. Are you getting plenty of light exposure during the day? Are you moving enough? Are you eating well? Are you eating too close to bed and that's interrupting your sleep quality? Are you watching TV and stimulating yourself pre-bed? Are you messing around on your phone? Are you just generally stressed out? I would absolutely recommend looking at these things first and foremost. Glucosamine was asked about in relation to joint health, and the most often overlooked thing in regards to joint health is going to be digestion, funny enough, because when folks are eating foods that they don't tolerate, they're going to ramp up inflammation in their bodies. The joints often become inflamed, and no amount of glucosamine or any other joint supplement is going to fix that. You need to address the input, aka the diet. And I'd recommend listening to both episode 108 titled Inflammation Explained, as well as 126 titled Joint Pain Explained. Ashwagandha is next. It's an Ayurvedic herb that's said to help with reducing stress and anxiety. And from what I've seen research-wise, it's not very efficacious. Lion's mane is a mushroom that's used as a cognitive enhancer and potentially to reduce inflammation. Some folks that I respect in the industry seem to think that this stuff works quite well. When it comes to cognitive enhancement though, you've got to look first at sleep, and in regards to inflammation, diet. Iodine is a mineral that's involved in thyroid function, and it's found in iodized table salt, fish, and it's really high in seaweed. And most folks get plenty of iodine. It is not a common deficiency. If you don't eat seafood and or you're on a salt restricted diet for whatever reason, you might benefit from iodine, but again, most folks are getting plenty of it. Nootropics were asked about, and typically nootropics are used to enhance alertness and cognitive function. And there are so many of these that I would need to dedicate a whole podcast in itself to them. However, when it comes to alertness and cognitive function, of course, like I mentioned, sleep is going to be big. And then also just good old-fashioned coffee or caffeine works like a charm. Nootropics tend to be very expensive. I mean, if you want to give them a go, by all means, go for it. Personally, I've tried some nootropics, and at this point, I just have a cup of coffee. Vitamin D and lung health was asked about, which is super specific. And vitamin D is important for the immune system. And again, if you live in an area of the world where you don't get much sun and you know that your vitamin D status is low due to blood work, you may want to supplement. However, when we think about vitamin D and the immune system relationship, it's important to take a step back and look at what is paired up with vitamin D in nature. When we get vitamin D from the sun, and the sun is outside, and we know that being outdoors is healthful in and of itself, also getting light exposure improves sleep, and sleep is actually when the immune system regenerates itself. Also, when we're outside, we're typically moving, which is great for the immune system as well as the lungs themselves because you're likely increasing your breathing rate and exercising your heart. So, as a general rule, when looking at super specific stuff like this, I like to zoom out and look at the general context in terms of how things tend to happen and occur in nature from an evolutionary perspective, because that's the environment that we evolved in. And when you get hyper specific, it's really easy to miss the forest for the trees. I hope that makes sense. Another question I got was, are there universal supplements that everyone should be taking? And my answer to that is no. However, everyone should be eating a single ingredient, whole food rich diet, moving lots, preferably outdoors, and prioritizing sleep at night. That I can say is a universal concept for humans. Probiotics were also asked about, and probiotics are a tricky one just because the gut microbiome is so intricate. And the truth is that we just don't know all that much about it. Having said that, tossing a probiotic on top of a poor quality diet is sort of like pissing in the wind. And when folks ask about probiotics, typically they're asking about gut health and digestion in general. And what we do know is, when it comes to gut health, what you don't eat is potentially just as important as what you do eat. Because if you're eating a single ingredient, whole food diet, but your digestion is still off because maybe there are still some foods in the mix that you're not tolerating very well, you could still run into gut issues. So I'd recommend finding out what foods specifically your body doesn't like, and the most effective way to go about that is via a symptom journal. So basically you write down everything that you eat and just note next to each meal how you felt digestion-wise afterwards. So for example, if you eat a bunch of cheese and your stomach goes off, maybe you want to experiment without dairy for a week or two and see how you do. Or perhaps that each time you eat cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower, you feel gassy and bloated. Try skipping those guys for a week or two and see how you feel. Just as a general rule, animal products are typically digested very well, with dairy being the exception. On the other hand, there are a whole bunch of plant products that aren't digested very well by a fair number of folks. And it's important to note that just because a food is quote unquote healthy on paper doesn't mean that it can't cause digestion issues for you personally. Plants are not benign. They have all sorts of anti-predation chemicals that stop us and other animals from over-consuming them, because plants can't get up and run away like animals can, and therefore they need defense mechanisms in order to survive. And so they are chemical masters, and some of these chemicals cause digestive upset for some folks. Broccoli and cauliflower are prime examples. Gluten is a plant protein that troubles a lot of folks. FODMAP-rich foods like apples, beans, and lentils, for example, can cause issues for people. Don't fall for the it's a healthy food or a plant and therefore it cannot cause digestion issues. That is not the case. And a quick note on food allergy testing, it is largely inaccurate and ineffective, so I would recommend again the Symptom Journal. Now, having said all of that, for the vast majority of people, if they simply cut out the heavily processed food from their diet, their digestion should be bang on. But as always, there are exceptions. So if you do that and you're still having issues, give that Symptom Journal a shot. Now I want to share with you what I take personally on the supplement front, and it's a short list. I was taking Creatine Monohydrate. However, I recently moved to Mexico and haven't picked any up here, so I'm not taking that anymore. If I'm not eating fatty fish like salmon on a regular basis, regular being maybe 1 to 2 times per week kind of thing, sometimes I supplement with fish oil capsules. However, I've been eating salmon lately, so I'm good to go there. Meaning, I take a grand total of 0 supplements right now. And knowing what I know, I hope that that really hits home for you as far as what to prioritize, whether your goal is health, fat loss, or muscle building. Nutrition, movement, sleep, and stress management. I know that I sound like a broken record, but my absolute priority in regards to this podcast and all of the work that I do with my clients is the truth. I was thinking about it the other day, and I would say that my approach to all of this stuff is sort of like that person or friend that you go to when you really want to hear what you need to do in order to get the result that you're after without any pulled punches. My priority is that you get results. I have 0 interest in playing up or bullshitting in regards to what works and what doesn't. I'm committed to shooting straight with you guys, and I can't even tell you how many supplement companies and fad diet folks have reached out to me over the years and asked about promoting products and things. I refuse to do it. The one exception would be I'm not opposed to pairing with a supplement company that's totally transparent, and I would be very clear that supplements are, like I've mentioned throughout this podcast, the sprinkles on the icing of your cake, and I know that folks are going to take them regardless. And therefore, if there was a company that I aligned with on that front, then I'd be totally cool to team up. But the number one priority for me is the truth and results around all this stuff. So, rant over. I'll get off my soapbox now. If you want to know about any supplements at all, I'd recommend heading over to examine.com, which I'll link in the show notes below. It is an awesome resource for supplement information, and it's absolutely free and super easy to use and understand. As we wrap up here, I just want to reiterate that I've been in this game for a long time, and I've never taken an over-the-counter supplement that really changed things for me. And I have spent thousands and thousands of dollars on supplements. I've also spent hundreds and hundreds of hours researching supplements, and by far the biggest benefits that I've seen have been via the staples of nutrition, movement, and sleep. Simple as that. Now, if you've absolutely optimized those 3 things and then you choose to play with some supplements just because you want to, fair enough. But if real results are what you're truly after, don't put the cart before the horse. Dial in the foundations because those are what are going to get you the results. Yes, it's harder. It requires more effort than popping a pill or drinking some sort of powder, but that's just the way life works, right? There's no magic bullet when it comes to this stuff. Otherwise, we would have heard about it by now. If you're interested in applying for one-on-one nutritional coaching and or workout design with me, you can click the link in the description below or head on over to n1fitness.com/coaching. Follow me up on Instagram at N1Fitness and feel free to friend me on Facebook at Marcus Sadu. Also, if you'd like to join my mailing list, you can head on over to the website and type your email in the little pop-up box. And lastly, be sure to hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're using. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you found this useful, and I will catch you on the next episode. See ya.